Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, nationally recognized retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
One of the most frequent questions I ask of a married couple during our first meeting together is this: what will either one of you do when, not if, when the other passes away? The question is definitely a showstopper and one that most spouses have never truly considered, or at least not thought about long enough to put a plan in place to address this inevitable event, one of them passing away before the other. Which then leads to my next question. If there was a way to make sure that the remaining spouse knew exactly where all of your investments were located, and just as importantly, had a written game plan the surviving spouse could follow to be sure that they were making good financial decisions and not making mistakes, is this something you would want to have in place? And without hesitation, the answer from both is always, of course, which their next question is, so how do we do that? To which I would say, I'm glad you asked. Well, welcome, folks, to the Worry-Free Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, retirement planning specialist and fiduciary, Tony Walker. And today I'm going to share with you the 4 keys to making sure that your spouse will be able to remain worry-free in retirement when you are no longer in the picture. But first, speaking of pictures and radio shows and all that good stuff, let me introduce to you in the studios with us, as always, the producer of the Worry-Free Retirement, America's favorite financial sidekick, Mr. Aaron Orander. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning, sir, and good morning to our listeners. How are you?
Doing very well. I got Derek Hudson, our graphics artist, feverishly working on the TV show. By the way, folks, I just met a gentleman the other day, Aaron. He listens to the radio program on Wacky. We're on several radio stations throughout the state. But I said, hey, have you ever seen the TV show? And he kind of went, no, I didn't even know you had a TV show, partner. So, folks, we do have a television show called The Worry-Free Retirement. We're on several stations. If you want to check that out, you can go to our website at TonyWalkerFinancial.com, and it's got all the listings of all the TV and radio stations. Okay, Aaron, I'm in my early 60s. You're in your early 40s. Here's the topic. You've seen the script on this thing. I know you're at a little different stage in life, but now that you've seen the script and kind of thought about, okay, yeah, what if, for instance, Jessica's out of the picture? Have you kind of thought about things that might be a little different around the old Orander household?
Well, yeah, now that we've talked about this for a couple of days and prepared and everything, so no, I'll be honest, in terms of Jessica passing away and me figuring out what to do with our retirement, well, since we're not close to retirement, that hasn't been a thought. But I have had a couple other thoughts. One example's kind of funny, but kind of serious. And then another one is a little more serious and a little less funny. So the first one, kind of funny, kind of serious, is, Jessica does all the cooking, not all the cooking, but Jessica does 95% of the cooking. I mean, I cook every once in a while, but, because I work and everything else and she's a stay-at-home mom, if Jess were out of the picture, it's like, I'll take her chili, for example. Well, I don't know what brand of beans she gets. I don't. I mean, and folks, I've seen the can 100 times sitting in the pantry. But if that can were to ever go away, I'd sit there and go, okay, what was it again? And I'd be that guy in the grocery store going up and down the aisle scanning it like, some old lady probably come help me. Are you lost?
Hey, so, Aaron, I got news for you. Just get Hormel.
Just get Hormel? Okay. All right. Whatever. So that was one thing. Now, on a more serious note, as we've talked about before on this show, Jessica and I do homeschool our children. And if she were gone or out of the picture or whatever, I mean, yeah, you talk about throwing me in a completely different world. I'd have to find, not only would I have to put them in, private school or public school or, whatever, but Tony, I seriously doubt you'd let me leave here every day at 2:00 to go pick up my kids and be home for the rest of the day. I'd have to find babysitters or daycare or, and I know there's a million people out there that do that, but, that's one thing that we'd have to adjust to.
Golly, that's a crucial point. I hadn't thought about the homeschooling thing. So the same thing, Aaron, happens when people get in retirement. There are different worries or different concerns, but a lot of these things people just haven't thought about. So the question is, who will the surviving spouse turn to? Here's the key question: for financial assistance in managing the money for the rest of their life. So you see where I'm going with this, Aaron.
Right.
One spouse passes away. You still have to deal with the finances.
That's right.
Okay.
They don't go away.
Oh, yeah. And here's some of the issues. Here's a couple of them. Do you continue to maybe take as much risk as your spouse took? I have a lot of clients who, let's say, whoever manages the money, husband or wife, let's say they're comfortable with risk. Maybe they're working with a stockbroker and they're not worried about it. Well, all of a sudden, that spouse who handles the, quote, investments passes away, and you got the surviving spouse who may be a saver, does not like risk, and now they're going to have to maybe follow a plan that contains risk?
Wait a minute, Tony. Are you saying that everybody is not built the exact same way? Is that what you're telling me?
Oh, my gosh. And you wouldn't believe it, Aaron, when I meet with clients. Now, I will say, majority of the clients we meet, I think our messaging is spot on. People know we work with savers. We're not all about taking all this crazy risk. But every once in a while, I get couples, and man, they are not on the same page financially. And here's what's interesting, Aaron. A lot of times when I find out that both spouses are total opposites, maybe one's an investor and one's a saver, usually, not always, but usually the saver's the male. And I'll remind that saver, I'll say, okay, partner, you're in charge of all this money and you're doing a great job, but picture where she's going to be and who she's going to have to trust with this money that she knows nothing about. And most men at that point will say, you know what, I hadn't thought about that. Kind of like the homeschool deal. They just hadn't realized that now the spouse is going to have to move into a position that they know nothing about. And here's the worst part, Aaron. They may actually work with an advisor who, number one, talks down to them, realizes they don't have knowledge, and in some cases, not all the time, I wouldn't want to say this happens a lot, but I've seen it play out. They intimidate that spouse, and that spouse is afraid to ask questions and does not question that advisor. So folks, if that's you right now, if you're sitting there saying, not only am I in that position, Tony, I'm a widower, I've been single all my life, I don't have a trusted advisor, but yeah, Tony, man, this is resonating with me because me and my spouse don't have a game plan in place to deal with all the changes that will surely come our way when one of us dies. What are those changes? Well, you're going to have to stay tuned to find out. I'm Tony Walker with Aaron Orender. You're listening to The Worry-Free Retirement. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Wes Walker, Tony's nephew and one of the fiduciaries on staff. Wanted to take a minute to talk to you about fees and the drag they can have on your retirement accounts. So just to set the stage, the typical money manager charges about 1.5% per year on the assets that they manage for you. On $500,000, that'd be about $7,500 per year. And the question you've got to ask is this fee worth the service that they're providing? That service might just be to tell you to hang in there when the market's down, and it certainly almost never comes with a written game plan that has a team of retirement specialists behind it, making sure to see you to and through retirement. It's key when you get into this phase of life that you have a monitored game plan that can be pulled up and accessed easily by your advisor so that they can make changes or adapt it to your situation. If you'd like a free audit of your current employer-sponsored plan or IRA and want to see what the fees are like, what you're getting charged versus the service you're getting, please feel free to contact our office at 877-499-9255 or send us an email. You can email me, Wes, at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Thanks and have a good day.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Worry-Free Retirement. I am America's favorite sidekick, Mr. Aaron Orender. And Tony, I've got our TNT here. This comes from Mitch in Lebanon, Kentucky. And he asks, Tony, I was wondering, with the stock market down as much as 30% in 2022 and your firm offering investments with Charles Schwab, How do your firm's 3 strategies hold up in 2022 as compared to the stock market?
Ooh, that's a good question. And to help us answer that question is none other than my favorite nephew, our fellow fiduciary, Mr. Wes Walker, who oversees our 3 strategies here at Tony Walker Financial, which utilizes investments through Charles Schwab. Well, good morning, Wes.
Hey, good morning, Tony. Yeah, so to talk through each of our 3 strategies and just their performance in the calendar year 2022, I like to start most of these conversations, particularly with clients, just first noting that anything that they have in annuity contracts is not subject to these rates of return. So, if you owned a fixed indexed or a fixed annuity during this time, you didn't lose any money. This only applies to the portion of money that we would put with Charles Schwab. So again, doesn't include annuity returns. And then another caveat to this is that returns can differ based on when people enter and exit the market, if they change strategies, or if they just have different timings. So keep those things in mind when we go over these returns, but just as a general overview. So in all 3 strategies, back-tested rates of returns in actual client accounts, tried to pull real client accounts for these numbers. The conservative strategies, typical loss was around 9%. The moderate's typical loss was around 10%, and then the growth's typical loss was around 11%. So oddly enough, kind of fell right in line there, a percentage point difference between the 3 strategies. And some of the losses you think, well, the conservative ought to do a lot better than the growth. That just kind of added to the tumultuousness of the market. But again, the S&P 500 was down almost 18.5% in 2022, along with the aggregate bond index down somewhere near around the same level. So with our 3 strategies, we were under those 2 benchmarks.
All right. Thank you, Wes. All right. So let's get back to the 4 major issues I see when a spouse dies in terms of negative impacts that might occur in the finances upon the death of a spouse. First, in almost all cases when a spouse dies, the other surviving spouse's income. Listen, folks, this is really important. This is why these harebrained schemes of people on the radio, these financial entertainers telling you you won't need life insurance in retirement, it is crazy. Listen, in almost all cases, the other surviving spouse's income will go down for various reasons, okay? It will decrease when the other spouse passes away. I see it all the time. So, for instance, I had a widow come in the other day, met with me for the first time, said, Tony, prior to the death of my husband, we had about $5,000 a month coming in. Since that time, the income's dropped to $3,000 a month. Aaron, why do you think that is?
Well, because they're not alive. They're not there anymore. Is that what you're asking?
Well, yeah, and the person that was alive in this example, after looking at her finances, here was a couple things. First of all, he had a pension plan.
Okay.
He was making around $3,000 a month, but it went to what's called a survivorship clause when he died. So her income was cut in half immediately at his death,
right,
due to the pension, the way it was set up. You couldn't change this. Okay. The second thing they hadn't thought about is when one spouse dies, although both of them were drawing Social Security, and both were drawing a pretty good Social Security because she worked outside the household as well, she lost her Social Security, that was the lowest of the 2, and then went just to his. So they had 2 Social Security incomes. He dies, one of them drops off. And they had no idea this was going to happen. So folks, you have to understand, and we'll try to talk to this later if we have enough time. If not, we'll pick it up on the next show. But folks, more than likely, 99% of the time when one spouse dies, that income is going to go down. Here's another thing that comes up all the time. This happens a lot. Again, I'm being the traditional male out there, and female come in to talk to me. I start asking about their housing situation, and maybe they're happily ever after in their dream home in retirement. But as they get older, that home, in many cases, if they've been there a long time, Aaron, looks bigger and bigger. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. My grandparents, when my grandfather passed away, my grandmother sat in this big empty house that my sister and I would have to, come over every other day and clean, vacuum, reset the time on the VCR. Have you ever had to do that? You ever had to
reset? I still haven't figured out how to do that.
Oh my gosh. Almost every other day I'd have to go reset the time on the VCR.
Okay, so here's the other problem. Like, let's say I've got several clients that have pretty large yards, some of them 5-10 acres, and hubby loves out there on that zero turn mowing and all that. Well, not only is hubby getting tired of mowing it, but when he dies, I'll look at the wife and say, do you know how to run that thing? She said, I ain't getting on that zero turn, which if she keeps the house, She's going to have to pay somebody to mow a 5-acre lot or whatever. Here's another issue I see all the time. Hubby, it's usually the hubbies, by the way. We've got a client that's got a huge attic he's converted to work on clocks. I have clients who have large garages they've built to work on cars. I've got one client that has 6 cars, different street cars, hot rods. Shops, I've got several clients that have large shops, big garages that have woodworking. So folks, you got to understand. I had a client once whose husband collected computers. He was a techie guy. She couldn't figure out how to get rid of the things when he died. So folks, you have to realize you're probably at some point going to have to get rid of stuff or downsize, which leads to our next problem. This is a shocker. When you go to downsize, what do you think, Aaron? Do you think if you're going to find a nice condo or townhome somewhere, you think those things are $80,000 to $90,000 for something really nice?
You would think so. Yeah, sure. Why not?
I had Derek. It was funny. I said, Derek, look up on Zillow in Louisville just to see what a really nice 1,800 square foot single family home costs right now. What did you come up with, Derek? Yeah, he's got it on the screen there. What is it?
$324,000 roughly.
Wow. Now that's a nice area of Louisville, but folks, that little house I'm looking over Derek's shoulder, I mean, that thing 30 years ago probably wasn't worth $20,000, $40,000. I know it looks nice and fixed up, but what you have to understand is you may be leaving a house, downsizing, and actually could have to pay more for the new house. Does that make sense, Aaron?
That is insane. No, it doesn't make sense. I know.
Yeah.
Yes, I hear what you're saying, but that does not make sense to me.
It could, because what happens is a lot of times that surviving spouse wants to leave, maybe live in a more secure area, wants to live somewhere where everybody takes care of everything. Well, that's called common area maintenance, HOA fees. I mean, folks, this stuff can get expensive, all right? Number 3, a biggie here, the taxation of your income. Now, Aaron, I know this is going to blow you away. Okay, this doesn't make sense, but this is actually, I see this happening. Give you an example. I have a couple that's been my clients for years. His spouse passed away a few years ago. We had implemented mailbox money, so they were drawing mailbox money for each of them on this one annuity we'd set up. She dies. He obviously gets to keep the mailbox money coming for the rest of his life, which he loves that, all right? Even though he lost her Social Security at death, he came in and he was a little upset. He said, Tony, I had to file taxes this year because of your mailbox money. And I said, I'll call him Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, that's not the reason you had to pay taxes. The reason you had to pay taxes is you lost your spouse. And he's like, what?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I'd go, what?
So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about this phenomenon of what actually happened. This is really interesting. I'd say write your politicians, folks, you have a problem with this. I didn't create these goofy laws. So what we're going to do right now, our tax certified expert in our Bowling Green office, Miss Leanne Tinsley, is going to share exactly a case similar to this, what happens when you die, and why all of a sudden the surviving spouse had to pay taxes. So take it away, Leanne. How you doing this morning?
Good morning, Tony. I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're doing good here. So let's go through the first scenario. You've got the married couple. What's going on with their income now? They're both still alive.
Yes. So they're filing married and jointly now. They're showing about $21,000 in pension and IRA income. Their Social Security is coming in at $28,000, and we only have $1,500 of that is taxable right now. So when you add that standard deduction in for 2 people, you can see that no taxes are owed on this income at this time.
Wow, that's awesome. But then one spouse dies. Let's go to the next scenario. What happens next?
Well, now we've crossed over to that filing single status. And although their pension and IRA distributions hasn't changed, they have lost some Social Security income. That's down to about $18,000. And now we've got $2,500 of that Social Security that is now being taxed. And in addition, you'll see the big hit. They've lost that double standard deduction. Now it's only $12,950. And so we have a taxable income of just over $10,000. So now they're paying a tax on that of just over $1,000.
Man, and in the words of my late great father, Dick Walker,
heavy.
All right, number 4, the other issue that comes up that most spouses have no clue is going to occur when the first spouse dies, and this is a huge problem I see because I don't see any advisors providing what we can, this proprietary, easy to understand, written game plan, okay? And the problem with that is if you, sir or ma'am, whoever handles the finances, it doesn't matter. if the two of you do not have this written game plan in place before one of you passes, I can assure you, here's what's going to happen. Two things are going to happen. Number one, the surviving spouse is going to be left to go it alone, which in the world of retirement planning, that's pretty scary, as we're already realizing. You got taxes, fees, Social Security issues. You know, how much can you spend? How do you keep from running out of money? All those issues that a trained retirement specialist needs to be there for you, not just when you retire, but through retirement. But Aaron, here's what scares me even more. The spouse being left with an advisor, either they go out and try to find one, or an advisor that's continuing to work with them that really and truly is not trained in the art of retirement planning. Can you see how that might happen?
Yes, absolutely.
And here's why this happens, folks. What you have to understand, although everybody's talking about retirement planning, a lot of advisors, and there's some out there I'm sure are really good at what they do, but a lot of advisors are out there talking a good game. And what I see is, number one, no written game plan, and number two, a lack of understanding of the mind of the saver. This was really interesting. Just last night, Aaron, myself and Wes Walker, we were meeting with a couple. The gentleman's working with an advisor who actually they like, so he's a nice fella. But he said, you know what, as we get into retirement, none of this is making sense. And I said, why is that, Mr. Jones? And he said, well, because we're losing a lot of money. We're taking all this risk. And all he keeps telling us is you have to hang in there. In the long term, you're going to be fine. And I said, so why is that not resonating with you? And he said, because I'm not 40 years of age.
Yeah.
I'm older.
I was just thinking long term. It's like, hey, you may not be thinking long term.
Yeah, and my point is, what's obvious is, Aaron, you admit you don't know a lot about money, but that doesn't even make sense, does it? Why would somebody get older want to keep taking risk? It should be the opposite. Folks, as you get older, you got to batten down these hatches, and the only way you're going to be comfortable playing it safe, which is what we try to do for our clients at Tony Walker Financial, not take all this crazy risk, is you got to have the game plan to prove that playing it safe will work. So if you do not have a trusted advisor, if you're worried that the advisor may be working in their best interest instead of yours, if you don't have a written game plan, here's the cool thing about Tony Walker Financial. There is no obligation to do any business with us, to talk to me. In fact, we call this service the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. And here's how this works. All you got to do is log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, click on that Let's Get Started. We'll arrange this free phone call. It'll be with me personally, or if I'm unavailable, or if it merits, we'll have one of our trained fiduciaries talk to you. After we talk, then if it warrants, I will be happy to personally meet with you in our Bowling Green, Louisville, or Lexington, Kentucky offices at no cost, Aaron. There is no charge whatsoever. In fact, Aaron, what we do that most advisors don't do, we'll provide this free written game plan with our assessment at no cost, and they don't have to make any decisions that day on it. Pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, or give us a call, folks. Our number is 877-499-9255, 877-499-WALK. And when we come, we're going to close out the show. When we come back, folks, you got to stay tuned for this. Some interesting advice on this case study I'm going to share with you. You're listening to The Worry-Free Retirement. I'm Tony Walker.
Are you retired or retiring soon? Do you have a 401k, IRA, thrift savings account, 403b, or lump sum pension that you'd like to move to safer territory? Did you know that all the money you see on your 401k statement isn't really yours? Depending on your overall taxable income, the government has essentially a lien on your 401k that can tax as much as 40% of your money when you go to take it out. Tony Walker calls this the 401k tax tumor. For over 33 years, retirement specialist Tony Walker has helped thousands of savers worry less about money by creating game plans to deal with your tax tumor. Get control of your retirement by controlling the taxes owed on it. Schedule a free meeting to see if you can reduce your tax tumor and provide a guaranteed income you can never outlive. To get started, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Who can you trust? It's one of the most important decisions you'll have to make. Question is, are you ready? Well, we're here to help at Tony Walker Financial. You know, we care more about you than we do your money, and we have over 2,000 happy clients and an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau to prove it. Rolling over a 401k, confused about Social Security, maybe you're afraid of running out of money. Learn how to use and enjoy and protect your hard-earned money. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started. Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a pension buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today.
With the uncertainty of the stock market, our nation's debt spiraling out of control, and inflation running rampant, now may be the best time to consider moving your 401k to safer territory. My name is Tony Walker, and for over 38 years, I've made it my life's mission to help savers worry less about money, and I want to help you too. To speak with me at no cost or obligation, why don't you log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started.
Welcome back, folks, to the Worry-Free Retirement. Just want to remind you, you can follow us on social media. First, go to Facebook and you can type in The Worry-Free Retirement and subscribe there. Next, you can go to Instagram and look for @The Worry-Free Retirement. That's all one word, @The Worry-Free Retirement.
Thank you, Aaron. Let's get to it. We've only got a few minutes left. This is a really interesting case study. So maybe you're sitting there and you're saying, all right, Tony, you got my attention. I'm 68. My wife is 67. We're alive and healthy, all right? But I just didn't realize the stuff could hit the fan when one of us dies. So in this case, this particular couple, he's got $33,000 a month coming in Social Security. She's drawing half of his Social Security. He has a $2,500 a month pension with a 50% survivor option. That means she's going to get $1,250 if he dies first. Upon the death, we're kind of looking at this. We realize they're going to lose $1,500 a month in Social Security if he dies first, and she's going to lose $1,250 a month. So far, Aaron, over $2,700 a month is gone immediately if he dies first. Not looking too good, is it?
That's a lot of money.
That's a whole lot of money. So the good news is, here we go. They don't have a lot of debt, have a small home equity line of credit, but that's good, all right? They feel like their home is fine. They want to stay in it. But they've come to me because they feel like they're not getting a retirement game plan. And the $400,000 that they have in an IRA, it's been rolled over from a 401k to a broker, they feel is way too risky. In fact, they lost quite a bit of money last year. Same deal. They've gone back to the broker. He says, hang in there. It's fine. Okay, that ain't good enough. So here's two options that we could share with them. All right? Two things you could do to be proactive. Number one, we could take some of that IRA and set it up in what we call our split IRA concept and set up some potential mailbox money.
Mailbox money!
So the good news would be if he dies, okay, he steps out, we step in, Aaron, with mailbox money to try to make up that gap of the $2,500 loss she's going to suffer. That's guaranteed income for life right there for her. That would help. Here's another option. Again, these are just options, folks. Don't rush out and do any of this without first talking to us. But here's another option. Assuming they're in good health, especially him, since he's more the breadwinner and we're going to lose some of his pension, he could buy a product that's been around over 100 years called life insurance. And folks, the modern day life insurance policies we use in retirement planning, the same policies that have always provided that tax-free cold hard cash when you need it, that can infuse that tax-free cash into the wife's income so she doesn't run out of money and doesn't take a huge hit. Folks, we do that as well. So if you're sitting there right now and you're saying, Tony, I didn't realize you could do all these services, the investments, the annuities, your expertise in estate planning and life insurance, we need to talk. And it's really easy to do, folks. All you got to do to set up a no-obligation phone call with me, the owner of the company, a fiduciary with over 38 years of experience, is go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Click on that Let's Get Started. We'll arrange that free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. Or if you like, speaking of phone calls, just call us right now. If we're not available, our answering service will pick up the line. We will call you back as soon as possible. That number is 877-499-5555. 877-499-9255. That's 877-499-WALK. Well, we've certainly enjoyed our time together, and we hope you have a good week. But between now and next week when we talk again, if all else fails, you be worry-free and make it a good one.